My unhinged new neighbor claimed she bought the whole building, made up fake landlord rules, tried to tow our cars, invade our home, and evict me from the property I actually own. Alright, let me kick this off by saying I'm writing this on my phone, so apologies in advance if the formatting is a bit off. Anyway, I'm a 31-year-old woman living in a small block of 6 units, that's apartments, for those not from Australia. About a month ago, the unit right above mine went on the market and sold pretty fast. The new owner moved in less than a week ago, which seemed normal enough until this morning. I got up, took out the trash, and noticed a note stuck to my front door. I honestly figured it was just a neighborly "hi, I'm new here" type of thing. Yeah, I couldn't have been more wrong. The note started with a "Dear tenant, I recently purchased your building and wanted to introduce myself. My name is blah blah," leaving her name out for obvious reasons, and I consider myself a fair landlord. However, there are some rules that must be followed. And then came the rules. 1. Everyone must be inside their units by 9 p.m. If you plan to be out later, you should make arrangements to stay somewhere else. 2. No pets allowed. If you currently have any, they need to be removed before I conduct an inspection, or I'll call animal control to take them. This is your only warning. 3. I will be inspecting each unit once a month, and you must be present to answer any questions or risk eviction. 4. If your rent isn't paid on time, expect to be evicted. She closed it with, "If we all follow these guidelines, I'm sure we'll get along just fine." What in the actual hell did I just read? Fun fact about our building, every unit is individually owned. No one owns the whole thing. We each own our own little slice. So, her calling herself the landlord was completely ridiculous. I won't lie, when I got to rule number 2 about the pets, I had a bit of a panic attack. I've got cats, and there's no way I'm parting with them. Then I remembered, thankfully, that we actually own our unit now. We used to rent it from a friend, but right before Christmas, she mentioned wanting to sell, and we jumped on the chance to buy it. We didn't even have to move out, just signed some papers and stayed put. It still feels like renting sometimes, but it's ours. Now, I'm not usually the confrontational type. Honestly, I shake whenever I have to deal with stuff like this. But in that moment, I was angry enough to march upstairs and knock on her door. And you know when you get that gut feeling that something's off? Mine was spot on. The door swings open, and standing there is the ultimate Karen. Her hair was even blonder than mine, her nails long and bright, and she looked downright irritated to see me. I introduced myself and told her I lived downstairs. Then I brought up the note she left on my door. She cut me off mid-sentence and started going on about how her letter contained basic rules that even a child should be able to understand. If I didn't like it, she said I could go ahead and submit a letter to vacate. Unbelievable. I told her straight up that she was mistaken, she didn't buy the whole building, just her own unit, same as the rest of us. So, no, she didn't have the authority to enforce those so-called rules. She did not like hearing that. She started screaming, insisting that she had in fact bought the entire property and that failure to follow her rules would result in my eviction. For a moment, I honestly started doubting myself until another neighbor opened his door. He stepped out, looking groggy, and asked if she could stop shouting because he worked nights and was trying to sleep. I explained what was going on, that she was under the impression she owned the building and could make rules for everyone. She started yelling again. And that's when my neighbor hit her with the best line I'd heard all day, "Are you stupid?" Her jaw literally dropped. He calmly explained that she was completely wrong and told her that he's actually part of the Strata Committee, kind of like an HOA for our building, and she had absolutely no right to dictate anything to anyone. She gave us both the nastiest looks before slamming her door shut. I thanked him, and he just shook his head and said, "I've lived here for years, and I've never met anyone so entitled." Update number 1. So, here's an update for anyone wondering if she ever did anything else, and yes, she did. This is actually happening right now while I'm at work. My partner is at home and texting me about it. Quick recap, she moved in and left everyone in the building notes claiming she owned the whole place and laid out some insane rules we were all supposed to follow. Of course, she only owns her unit, not the building, but it's still unclear if she's just wildly misinformed or outright delusional. She'd been quiet the past few days, and I was hoping that was the end of it. Apparently not. So, each unit has one designated parking space. Just one. I park in mine, and my partner usually parks his car on the street behind the building. There's also one visitor parking spot, just one, and it's rarely used. The neighbors all said my partner could use it if he wanted to, but he's never bothered. He doesn't mind parking on the street. Well, this morning, he was woken up by shouting. Our kitchen window faces the parking lot, so he took a peek and saw the neighbor, yep, that one, arguing with our friendly neighbor. She was yelling that she needed to park her second car in his space and he needed to move or she'd have it towed. He calmly told her that it was his spot, and if she had another car, she could use the visitor space or park on the street. And if she had his car towed, he'd report it stolen. She kept yelling about how she could park wherever she pleased and that he had to move it or else. To be safe, my partner moved his car into my space while I was at work just in case she tried to steal the spot. His last text said she stormed upstairs and slammed her door. Update 2. When I got home from work, I saw that she had parked her second car in the visitor spot, but she parked it so poorly that it was halfway blocking the driveway. I'm too tired to deal with her nonsense right now, so I parked on the street. Update. Sorry for the delay in updating. So, like I said, she'd blocked the driveway, and I had to leave my car on the street. The next morning, when I left for work, the car was still there. But when I came back home, it was gone. Turns out, my partner saw a tow truck come by and haul it away. I still don't know exactly which neighbor called the tow truck on her, but if I had to put money on it, I'd guess it was the same guy she was yelling at in the parking lot. She's been quiet all day since just the occasional footsteps above us. And just like many of you predicted, she wasn't done. Not even close. If you missed the last update, her car got towed. I'm still not sure who made the call, but luckily she hasn't aimed her anger at me or my partner since we were both at work when it happened. Now, it's been raining nonstop all week. Since we don't have a dryer, I haven't been able to wash any large stuff like towels or sheets, only clothes I can hang up inside. But Saturday finally gave us some sunshine, and I basically raced home from work like it was a laundry emergency. I even dragged my partner out of bed to help because I wanted to knock out as much as I could before the rain came back. We managed 5 loads, 5 whole loads of bedding, towels, and blankets. I hung them all out on the shared clothesline outside. There are technically 2 lines for everyone to use, and we've never had a problem before. I got the last load hung up and finally went inside to relax. About an hour later, I went back out to start bringing the first load in, and everything, literally everything, was on the ground. Not only that, but all my pegs were gone, including the little basket I keep them in. Nothing had been hung in their place, just torn down and tossed. Most of the laundry was still damp but now completely filthy from the dirt. I called my partner, and we gathered it all back inside. I was fuming. I marched upstairs and knocked on her door. When she answered, I asked if she'd taken my laundry down. With a smug little smile, she told me that I didn't have her permission to use her line and that next time, if I asked nicely, she might let me. Let me tell you, I've worked retail long enough to know how to keep my cool with unreasonable people. I'd tried to be patient with her up until this point. I'd stayed calm through the letter fiasco, the parking space nonsense, but this was petty on a whole new level. I just wanted clean sheets for my bed, my little comfort zone, and she went out of her way to screw with that. I told her flat out that the clothesline was shared. Everyone uses it. It's part of the building's communal space and no one needs to get her permission for anything. She tried to talk over me, but I wasn't having it. I raised my hand and cut her off. I said, I'm part of the Strata committee. I know the building rules, I know who owns what, and I'm telling you, this behavior needs to stop. It's childish, it's ridiculous, and it's helping no one, especially not you. Then I smiled and told her to have a nice day. She slammed the door in my face. Update 3. I was really hoping she'd calm down. I mean, things had actually been peaceful for a bit. Her cars were parked where they should be, one in her spot, the other out on the street behind my partner's. Nobody's laundry was being attacked, no more passive-aggressive notes appeared, it was almost normal. Then came yesterday. Since we live in the bottom unit, we have a side door that opens into the shared backyard. I mostly use it to air the place out or take a shortcut to hang laundry. Otherwise, it stays closed. Anyway, yesterday we were just enjoying the day when we noticed our delightful neighbors setting up tables and chairs out in the yard with a few other people. No big deal, it's a shared space. We figured maybe she was hosting a small get-together or something. Then came the knock. It was at our side door, glass sliding, so she could clearly see us sitting there. No chance of pretending we weren't home. We answered, did the polite greetings, and she got straight to the point. She said she was throwing a party and needed us to move the wooden planters on our patio because she wanted to set up her barbecue there. No. First of all, the patio is ours. It's not part of the shared space. Second, the planters sit right next to our sliding glass door, and there was no way I wanted random people practically peering into our living room all night while they cooked. My partner reminded her again that she doesn't own the building and that no, we wouldn't be moving our stuff. One of her guests overheard the conversation and asked her what the hell she was talking about. They'd already set the grill up in the yard. She stomped off without saying a word. We figured that was the end of it. It wasn't. A few hours passed, and we ended up closing our curtains for privacy. This building isn't exactly designed with that in mind. We could hear the typical party noises, talking, laughter, someone manning the grill, nothing too crazy. Then there was another knock at the door. I was in the middle of making dinner, so my partner answered it. This time it was one of her guests, saying she needed to use the bathroom. Apparently, our neighbor told her to just knock on our door instead of going upstairs. My partner politely explained that our bathroom wasn't available, but it wasn't the guest's fault. She apologized for bothering us and left. Not 2 minutes later, there was loud banging on the door. Now my partner is one of the calmest guys you'll ever meet, very even-tempered, logical, not quick to anger. But this time? He was done. He opened the door and let her have it. He told her to back off and stop treating the building like her personal kingdom. Our bathroom wasn't up for public use, her guests could use her bathroom, and if she knocked again, he'd be calling the cops for harassment. At that point, one of her own friends stepped in and told her she needed to stop harassing us. Then they turned to us, apologized, and wished us a good night. Surprisingly, the party didn't go on too late, wrapped up around 1 a.m., which was honestly earlier than expected. The next morning, the yard was all cleaned up. Everything looked normal, except our planters had been knocked over. Joke's on her, though. We hadn't planted anything in them yet, and most of the soil in there was actually used cat litter. I buy potting mix as a cheap litter alternative, so now she gets to enjoy the scent of my cat's old business. Update 4. Welp, here I am again. I had really started to believe maybe our neighbor had finally gotten a grip and backed off. But nope. Her nonsense is far from over. So, she's still here. I wish I could say otherwise. I really hoped she'd either move out or chill out. But no. Turns out, she's just been biding her time. Now, I still occasionally hear her arguing with the neighbor upstairs, but for the most part, things had been relatively quiet until this afternoon. To back up a bit, if you followed my previous updates, you already know my new upstairs neighbor moved in thinking she'd purchased the entire building. Spoiler, she didn't. She just bought one unit like the rest of us and tried to enforce a bunch of made-up rules that were as ridiculous as they were illegal. After some arguments, I honestly believed she'd finally accepted reality. Boy, was I wrong. So today was nice and cool, finally a break from the rain. Since I live on the ground floor, I opened the glass sliding door that leads into the shared backyard. I kept the screen door shut and locked, just to let some fresh air in and clear out that musty post-rain smell. Every time that door's open, my cats sit by it and birdwatch like tiny furry guards on duty. I was feeling wiped out, and my partner suggested we take a quick nap while we waited on the washing machine to finish. Sounded like a plan, so we laid down. About an hour later, we woke up to a loud rattling sound coming from the living room. I figured one of the cats was climbing the screen again. I got up, ready to scold them, and instead found her. Yep. My entitled neighbor was yanking on our locked screen door like she was trying to break in. The whole thing was shaking. I asked what the hell she thought she was doing, and she casually told me she saw my cats through the glass and wanted to come in to pet them, but the door was stuck. I said, no, it's not stuck. It's locked, because this is my home. You can't just waltz in here whenever you feel like it. She kept tugging at the handle and started raising her voice, insisting I had no right to keep my cats away from people who just wanted to show them real love. According to her, it was basically her right to pet them. I told her again, as clearly and firmly as possible, that this was my residence and not some open petting zoo. She had no business trying to force her way in. That must have set her off, because she immediately started screaming at me. Called me a little bitch, accused me of abusing my cats, and demanded to know how I dared to speak to her that way. At that point, I was done being polite. I flashed the biggest, fakest smile I could and sweetly told her to kindly, well, you can guess, get lost. And I swear, if looks could kill, my cats would have been dining on my corpse. She yanked on the door one last time until my partner walked out and told her point blank that if she didn't let go and leave immediately, he was calling the police. She finally backed off, gave us both the death glare of the century, and stomped off upstairs. We've now ordered another security camera specifically for that door. And yes, before anyone asks, my cats are microchipped and accounted for. ETA, a few people asked why we didn't call the cops immediately. My phone was charging in the bedroom, and I didn't bring it with me when I got up. Also, where I live, unless something's happening right then and there, police don't usually show up or take much interest. My partner only came out because he heard yelling and thought I was talking to the cats again. Update 5. Here's a quick refresher for anyone new to the saga. This woman moved into the unit above us and immediately decided she was queen of the building. She thought buying one apartment meant she owned everything. She tried handing out ridiculous rules, took over shared spaces, threatened to have cars towed, accused me of abusing my cats because I wouldn't let her pet them, and screamed at me for not letting her friends use our bathroom. Lately though, she's been oddly quiet. No more notes, no more screaming fits, just silence. Then, last week, I bought a new car. Yay! It's a bit bigger than my last one, so until I get more confident parking it in our tight little spot, I've been parking on the street. One evening, I came home from work and noticed a guy standing on her balcony. He smiled and waved, said hello, and introduced himself as her nephew. Apparently, she broke her foot at a recent family dinner, tripped over a dog, and has been staying with relatives ever since because she can't manage the stairs. He told me he was house-sitting for her, mostly because, in his words, she doesn't trust the neighbors. But then he paused, glanced around, and added, honestly, you all seem really nice. Maybe she's just crazy. It took everything in me not to burst into dance right then and there. Update 6. Welp, she's back. We heard the door upstairs slam a few days ago, peeked out, and sure enough, her car was in the lot again. Not sure if her nephew's still around, but she's definitely returned. Unfortunately, I recently tested positive for you-know-what and have been responsibly isolating at home, feeling like absolute garbage. Thankfully, I'm fully vaccinated, so it's not the worst, but the headaches? Brutal. Last Saturday, my partner was out picking up his new car and didn't get home until late in the afternoon. He parked on the back lawn to rinse it off quickly. I was watching from the window, half dead on the couch, when I heard her balcony door slam open and her start shouting at him to get off her lawn. He told her to shove it. Reminded her, again, that it's not her lawn, and to please keep it down because I was sick and the yelling wasn't helping my migraines. Well, that was a mistake. I heard her stomping down the stairs like a bull in a china shop. She started banging on our door and screaming that I was diseased, that I needed to isolate somewhere else, and that if I didn't leave immediately, she was going to call the police. I yelled through the main door that she's been told countless times she can't evict us, we own our unit, and if she wanted to call the cops, go right ahead. Odds are, she'd end up the one getting fined for wasting their time. My partner, who was walking in after moving his car, said she looked ready to explode, but when she saw him, she backed off and ran upstairs. No cops showed up. No more banging. Just silence. I'll admit, I was so tempted to open the door and say, sharing is caring. But I restrained myself. ETA, for everyone asking, no, we can't get her kicked out. She owns her apartment, just like we own ours. And unfortunately, lawyers here in Australia cost a fortune even just to talk to one. When we bought our place, the lawyers we hired messed up my name on the paperwork and still charged us extra to fix their own error. As far as I know, the upstairs neighbor spoke with the lawyer about her behavior, but there's not much that can be done unless she crosses some serious lines. Update 8. Did you miss me? I truly hoped I'd never have to post about her again. I thought maybe, she was finally acting like a normal human being. Spoiler, she wasn't. So, she'd been unusually quiet. Her car was hardly around. I was beginning to wonder if she'd moved out for good, until last week, when I got a not-so-pleasant reminder that she's still here. For context, there are 8 units in our building. I live on the ground floor, and the sweet older lady across the hall and I have a little unspoken agreement: if one of us isn't home and a package arrives, the other will accept it so it's not left in the hallway. I was expecting a delivery and had a feeling it might come while I was at work. I wasn't too worried though, because I figured my neighbor would grab it for me. But she had gone away for a few days, and no one else was around. Sure enough, my package was left by my front door. And by the time I got home, it was gone. Yep, she had it. About 10 minutes later, I heard her signature stomping on the stairs, followed by loud banging on my door. Long story short, she took my package, claimed she was just holding onto it, and then told me it accidentally ripped and she saw what was inside. It was, let's just say, adult items, some self-care purchases, a few spicy treats. You get the idea. The moment I opened the door, she chucked the box at me and started shouting about how I was a disgusting pervert and should move out before I spread it. I calmly told her that opening someone else's mail is, in fact, a crime. Buying sex toys is not. But hey, thanks for taking care of my package.